Live from the European Parliament here in Strasbourg, this is Raw Politics. Thank you for joining us tonight, and this is what we have coming up for you. Facing his critics, Viktor Orban defends his record under threat of major EU sanctions. Ready or not, here he comes. Wyclef tells us he's not backing new copyright laws. The state we're in, a special look ahead to Jean-Claude Juncker's big speech. Barnier's Brexit boost. Could a deal really be done in a matter of weeks? And the Belgian politicians over a barrel at the weekend. Well, it's time to meet our panel for tonight. We have Esther Zalan. She is a reporter with the EU Observer covering populism and Brexit. It's good to see you, Esther. What story are you watching tonight here at the Parliament?
Hungary and Orban's defense. I'm from Hungary, so it's especially interesting to me, and this was a crucial day in that debate.
Indeed, it is. And we also have joining us tonight Tomasz Zdechowski, a Czech MEP who is a member of the European People's Party. What story are you watching?
I'm watching the Hungarian case and the Orban defense, of course, because it's very important for my party, but for the Middle Europe and Visegrad Group also it's topic number one.
Indeed, it is also our topic number one here on Raw Politics. So Viktor Orban is facing his critics head-on here in Strasbourg today. MEPs will decide this week whether or not to formally tell the Hungarian leader to clean up his act over the way he's been running the country. Well, some members of the EU Parliament have been highly critical of Orban's right-wing government, his perceived attacks on the press, the judiciary, migrants, and the rights of minorities. Now, a report from the Committee on Civil Liberties suggests that he presents a systemic threat to EU's fundamental principles.
The Hungarian government has effectively silenced independent media. By putting academia on a leash, future generations will not learn to appreciate critical thinking. It has replaced independent judges with those with a closer tie to the regime. It makes life miserable for NGOs that provide services to citizens in need, such as homeless people, migrants and refugees, and marginalised groups like Roma.
Every nation, every member state has the right to organise its life in its own country. We will protect our borders, and we will decide who to live together with. We have built a fence. We have stopped illegal migrants, hundreds of thousands of them. We have defended Hungary, and we have defended Europe.
So we heard there from the report author, Dutch Green MEP Judith Sargentini, and of course Viktor Orban. I'll start with you, Esther. You are from Hungary. This is a big story. It's a big deal. Tell us what you thought about, that impassioned exchange there.
I think it's very interesting how the allies of Mr. Orban, the members of EPP, have reacted. I think there were more critical voices than before, and I think that could be crucial for the vote tomorrow. And just to say, this could be the beginning of a process. So this is not to punish Hungary. This is asking the member states, other member states in the EU, to examine whether what is in the report is correct and whether there is a threat to democracy in Hungary.
Yeah, and what about you, Mr. Zdechowski? What do you think about, you said that this is what happens in Hungary is also important for you and your party, you were saying.
Yes, General, we have a very open dialogue with Viktor Orban for 4 years, and I many times discuss with him the concrete things, and sometimes he change his opinion about these things, especially about things about the minorities or things about the migrants, but really he is open to make dialogue, and for me today's story is very sad story.
If he is open to dialogue, did you ever tell him, you know what, you crossed the line this time?
Yes, it was many times mentioned on EPP group, and I think that nobody mentioned on discussion that it's sometimes better to have Viktor Orban in EPP group, like Viktor Orban out of the group, because in the group are many of people who really understand the situation. And many times, if I hear the criticism on Libe committee or in other hearings, I know that many times we are using not facts but emotions.
You mean it's... Yeah, go ahead.
I think what's interesting is that Mr. Orban did engage in a dialogue with the Commission and the Parliament. But what he has done is on the substantial or the substantive issues, he has taken what critics say is a cosmetic changes only. So legalistic changes that doesn't really change the facts on the ground in Hungary, and the fact that there has been a curb in the checks and balances to the system in Hungary.
All right, so today we had this debate, and tomorrow the parliamentarians are going to have a vote. Now, what is this vote? It is on something called the Article 7. So what is this? Let's take a look.
It is with a heavy heart that we have decided to initiate Article 7.1. But the facts leave us no choice.
December 2017, and history is made. For the first time ever, Article 7 is used against Poland, the so-called nuclear option. So what is it? Essentially, it's a two-step punishment clause. The EU can't kick out a naughty member state, but it can warn and discipline them, and eventually remove their voting rights if there is a clear risk of a serious breach of the bloc's core principles. The catch? It requires two-thirds support, an absolute majority, at least 376 votes.
I know this is getting a bit technical, but it was said there is Article 7.1, which means a warning. It's not that the rights will be taken away already, right? So what do you think? Tomorrow, you think the vote will go Viktor Orban's way or not?
That's the million-dollar question. The vote will be very narrow, but from my discussion with MEPs from the EPP, which is Orban's party, there seems to be a growing discontent with him. So it will be a very, very narrow vote. Every vote will count.
And so you're an MEP. Would you tell us which way you're voting for tomorrow?
I think I cannot predict from the before we will vote in this issue how everybody will voting, because many times it's about the atmosphere, and sometimes the atmosphere can change.
So you can still be swayed basically tomorrow.
Yes, I know many colleagues who are not sure how they want to vote it, if plus or minus for this report. Also, it will be for me very big surprise.
Well, heading up this report is the author, Dutch Green MEP Judith Sargentini, and we have our political editor Darren McCaffrey, who is with her at the moment. Darren, over to you.
Yeah, indeed, a pretty robust and lively debate in the European Parliament, a couple of hours ago. It's only just wrapped up that session. As you say, it all came about because of Judith Sargentini, who is a Dutch MEP who launched that 37-page report, I think, into the situation in Hungary. What first motivated you? Why this report?
Well, since 2010, the Parliament has been urging Council and Commission to act when Orban was elected, and he got a two-thirds majority, and he changed the constitution overnight. And then newspapers started to close down, and judges were replaced. All in all, he's been taking away vital parts of democracy since 2010. And then only in 2017, finally, the Parliament had the courage to start this process, after Council and Commission did nothing.
It isn't so. Obviously, as I say, we've got this report now. MEPs were having to think about it. We've got this vote tomorrow. Viktor Orban's main point was, though, why exclude him from the process? Isn't that part of what the European Union's getting wrong? Trying to shut down voices rather than trying to get them to compromise?
But he's so included in the process. First of all, there's all sorts of communication between the Commission and the government of Hungary, infringements, letters, whatever, and also the part of the Parliament. He's been here, I think this is the third or the fourth time he speaks in Parliament about the situation in his country. And his Minister of Foreign Affairs has been in public here speaking, by the way, in public calling me a liar 10 times. I met with the ambassador a couple of times. I've been to Budapest. They're so part of the process. But this is not targeted. This is not a negotiation with Hungary or the government of Hungary anymore. This is towards the Council, to the other 27 member states that need to take responsibility.
And what do you think about this point that other MEPs made, that simply he was addressing his domestic audience today? You're only likely to increase his support back in Hungary.
Whatever we do, it's always useful, Viktor Orban, in his home market. And the tool that we've got in front of us to show that we care about every European citizen, Hungarian, Dutch, German, French, it doesn't matter, and that we're there to protect their fundamental rights is what I'm doing. And if I shy away and I think this is only useful for the home market, then I leave behind a lot of Hungarians that are worried about their country and that are not happy with Viktor Orban, his friends and family filling their pockets with taxpayers' money without providing the service they have to provide.
And just very, very quickly, do you think you're going to win tomorrow?
It's going to be a very close call, and it depends on the European People's Party, the party that Viktor Orban's Fidesz party is a member of. There is a serious majority, but it needs to be a two-thirds majority. We'll see.
Thank you very much indeed. As I say, that vote is coming tomorrow, Tessa. I mean, it will be a pretty resounding decision if two-thirds of MEPs do decide to start this process of enacting Article 7. We'll probably never got to the conclusion where it's actually in place, but would still send a pretty strong signal to Hungary. But no sign today that Viktor Orban is deciding to back down.
All right, thank you for that, Darren. And Dutch MEP Judith Sargentini, you were reacting, you were smiling at some point when she was talking. Tell us what you think.
Yes, because my colleague Sargentini was speaking about Viktor Orban, that he's playing here a game for his Hungarian public
audience,
and I think that she's playing the same game before the election, and this is what I am many times criticized. Why we didn't started this procedure before? Why we didn't open it much more for other people?
But what about on the point of what Viktor Orban has been doing in Hungary? I mean, to that point.
Just to say that Ms. Sargentini announced a couple of days ago that she will not run again in the parliament elections next May. So this is not to boost her campaign. And the other point is it's not difficult to play to your own audience when you dominate the media scene completely and the political discourse. The point.
No, right. I was just talking about the point of the media in Hungary. You said you were working for a newspaper before as well, so there's truth to some of the accusations then.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The newspaper I used to work for has been shut down by a government-friendly organization company.
Yeah. All right, so we'll leave it at that for now. You have to change gears because there's another story that has people talking over here. Now, you might want to circle the 23rd of October in your calendar. That and more in today's Brexit Brief.
6 to 8 weeks, that's the new timeline a suddenly optimistic Michel Barnier has given for a deal with the UK.
I think it's possible.
The comments from the EU's chief negotiator come amid talk of a special Brexit summit in mid-November. And it's 199 days before the deadline, not like anyone's counting. Back in London, and surprising to few, Boris Johnson's allies reportedly say he will continue throwing rocks at Theresa May's Brexit plan. This as he ducks fallout from his latest comments, comparing May's negotiations to a suicide vest. The backlash, explosive to say the least. Meanwhile, UK police chiefs are drawing up plans to deal with civil disorder at borders and ports in the event of a no-deal Brexit. A leaked police report warns officers might even have to call on military assistance to deal with public disorder. Did we mention 199 days left?
I mean, Brexit, this is a story that's underlying, I think, ever since that vote. What do you think, that deadline of November? Do you think the European Parliament, I'll put it to you, Thomas, do you think that deadline is reasonable?
I think it must be reasonable. Also, there is not any other chance to change it, although it was really so promoted, and I think that if nothing other happens, it will be November.
All right. And what about you, Esther? What do you think?
There is one more summit in the year, in December, and as I've been covering European affairs, diplomats and EU officials like to push things to the very end. So I could not rule out a date beyond November.
Oh, really? So you think it's going to be pushed down the road more?
It's possible.
Highly possible. All right, thank you very much for that. It's also Catalonia Day. Now, the hundreds of thousands of people in Barcelona, they're expected to mark this event with protests. Alex Morgan and our team at theCUBE in Lyon is tracking this story tonight. Alex, what do you have?
Well, Tessa, you'll remember, of course, a year ago, we were all talking about the future of Spain as a united country. The real threat, it seemed, that from the Spanish side anyway, that Catalonia could be about to break away. Well, today is the ADA. It's the National Day in Catalonia. People are celebrating, but there's a real political significance. Let's just bring you some pictures from, as you say, hundreds of thousands of people there on the streets. Well, you see tens of thousands in this photograph taken from a window. Now, the political dimension today added to this came when the former Catalan president, the independence leader, if you like, Carles Puigdemont, said that people should take to the streets demanding that the result of that contested referendum, which let's not forget Madrid dismissed, should be upheld, saying that this National Day should be a rallying call for people across Catalonia. And we can actually bring you some live pictures being streamed on our Spanish Facebook page right now, just showing you the ongoing demonstrations now taking place in Barcelona as part of this National Day for Catalonia. Now, it is a very difficult political issue, obviously, in Catalonia. Even a year on, the issue's not gone away. And people are saying now, users like, let's just bring you up this one from Liz Castro here, who's an author based between Barcelona and Massachusetts, saying here that over the last year, people in Catalonia have been regrouping. They've been licking the wounds, if you like, and ready now to address the, in her words, terrible injustices inflicted by the Spanish authorities. Now, many demands from people there in the crowds were directly to the Spanish Prime Minister, saying, release independent politicians who are currently behind bars with legal proceedings against them over this contested referendum. Well, Pedro Sanchez tweeting to say today was a day for celebrating cultural identity, but nothing in this tweet to address any of the demands that people are levelling at him in the streets of Barcelona. Just to leave you on this one, though, the international support for separatists and people in Catalonia who want to break away has come from individuals like Mikko here from Finland, as well as other users across the European Union who are tweeting and sharing images in support. So, as you can see, it's a live political issue, not just inside Spain, in Catalonia as well, but across the European Union.
All right, thank you for that, Alex and the CUBE team. Now, we have a lot more coming up on Raw Politics. What to expect from Jean-Claude Juncker's last State of the Union address. Plus, my conversation with Wyclef Jean ahead of a vote on strengthening copyright laws. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, Strasbourg isn't exactly known as a hub for international musicians and artists, but today it's a little different. These musicians are all here for one reason, a debate over whether to update 17-year-old copyright laws and a vote tomorrow. Now, the issue has split musicians and pitted some against web giants like Google, who would be obliged to filter uploaded content for copyright violations and pay to publish or even link to content they don't own. Now, those against the reform say that it would mean the end of an open web and transform it into a giant snooping tool, while those in favor say artists are losing profits and their livelihoods. Well, believe it or not, this copyright vote has drawn in a Haitian rapper and a former Fuji Wyclef Jean. He's in Strasbourg for a concert in the parliament tonight, and he has appealed to MEPs to embrace and improve the internet rather than attempt to block and hinder it. And here's what he told Raw Politics a little earlier. The copyright law. Why is that?
Well, the first thing is, I was on my side first was, look, you know, you download a Wyclef, I need to get my money for it, you know. But what happened is it's a new generation and it's a new era. And what I'm watching is the amount of success that comes when you just leave the information open. So take a Wyclef song like Maria Maria. I own the copyright, right? Then DJ Khaled, Rihanna does it. It becomes Wild Thoughts. then 100,000 kids want to just do their own version of Maria Maria. Why would I not let them do that?
But you are already Wyclef Jean. You have a name. And not everybody will be able to gather that kind of attention just by putting something online for free.
Are you ready for this? So if you look statistically, right, the kids that are starting off as independent artists, right, and I use this, what are we working with? 0 to 0. I gave the example of me selling CDs from the back of my trunk to get what? Exposure and to get access. So the part which I was saying earlier is there's so much tools that kids could use. We could see it through 6ix9ine. I could tell you 50 to 60 different kids that were nobody and that learned how to use the internet tools and now that are turning that around. So I think if you saw earlier, I said there needs to probably be a new platform to explain to kids that are starting off, which I'll give you an example. I just signed these girls called the Isaac Sisters. And once again, they're new artists. How did I find them? I found them through the access of them doing covers of other people's songs.
But you see, for every success story, there are a lot of other struggling musicians who have the opposite opinion of you. They are for the copyright law to protect their content that they create. Do you not? You were once a struggling artist, weren't you? Do you not sympathize with their point of view?
Of course, I'm representing for the struggling artists, right? Because at the end of the day, right, when a struggling artist is starting out, right, I'm using myself. When I started out, the first thing that I needed was not to protect my copyright law. It was access. I needed somebody to hear me. That was the first thing that I need. So the first thing that you need as an independent artist, right, is the ability to have access so that people can hear you. Because look at this, right? Watch this. If an artist, right, that's a young Wyclef right now, right, he does Someone Please Call 911, right, and he gives it for free, right? And he doesn't protect it, right? He gives it for free, but you are aware he still owns his copyright, right? Sure. Now, he gives it for free. You out of nowhere, you sing Someone Please Call 911. Me as an agency, I realized that, holy crap, this is Wyclef, and all of a sudden, this kid can make so much money from the agency.
But very quickly, I want to ask you, because Sir Paul McCartney, you know, he's a successful artist as well. He's on the other side. He doesn't share your opinion. He says this is cheating people out of their earnings.
Yes. So once again, right? No, I'm on the other side. The side that I'm on is I'm watching it real time, right? Every artist that I've worked with, I've given an example, like Fuse.
You don't think he has a point?
Of course, we both have points. Now I'm giving you my point. I'm going to take an artist that was on tour, right? That opened up for me called Fuse, right? After we go to after party and they're like, yo, Clef, Clef, we need you to do a verse. I do a verse. Next day, they're like, Clef, we need you to do the video before you leave. Before I land, this song is on YouTube, right? Listen, now they blow up, and after they blow up, they go back to Ghana. They create foundations, they do all that. So when you're saying for every negative, there's a success story, right? At the end of the day, I'm not saying that the artist's copyright is not supposed to be protected. I didn't say that at all.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying that as an artist, you have to give freedom of range so that people can use the material, right? Could be able to share it. Because if you do not share, you lose access. And if you, because you're saying struggling artists, right? So when we were starting, the most important thing for any artist that's starting out, access. Okay. You need freedom of access.
All right, with that, thank you very much, Wyclef Jean.
Thank you, sir.
Well, as we heard there, not every musician shares Mr. Jean's opinion. And joining me now is Irish singer-songwriter Imelda May and Wikimedia's Free Knowledge Ambassador Dimitra Dimitrov. Thank you both for being on the program. I'll start with you. You're a musician. Do you agree with Wyclef Jean?
No, in short. I think it's a cold world out there where he is. I've seen his invite, and he's here with an anti-copyright campaign supported by Google. And I think he should come over to our side and join us. I have a statement here, and it's all from all artists, managers, record companies, writers of all kinds, Paul McCartney, Ed Sheeran, U2, myself, bands who have not been signed, bands who have not made it, all supporting Article 13 for this to
So why?
to happen.
Why is that?
We need to be protected.
Why?
Do you come to work unpaid?
No, but why? Tell me your point of view.
My point of view, from a personal point of view, is, you know, we work hard, we write songs, it takes a lot of time to do this, a lot of effort, all our creativity. This is why we need MEPs to protect us.
What about his point about access?
Oh, these kids and up-and-coming bands have access, and there's plenty of bands who have a lot of YouTube hits, and then you get a check for, they might have 1 million hits, they get a check for €20. What are you going to do with that? If they were being paid, and if they had money and fairness, I mean, we're just wanting people to abide by the law, for these big tech companies to abide by the law that already exists and already has been effective and taken into consideration by other big companies. Yeah. We're just asking for these to abide by the exact same laws. We do want freedom of speech, we do want freedom of the internet, we just want to be protected for our work and for what we do, and for smaller bands, up-and-coming bands, to be paid when they have so many YouTube hits, and then they can do zero with that. If they got some money for that, they can go into the studio and make the next Beatles record.
What do you think? I mean, you are from Wikimedia. What do you think about her point of view, that the artist actually gets, you know, Imelda's point of view, artist gets very little?
Well, we don't know how much artists get, because all these deals between author societies.
So where do you stand, first of all, on this?
Google are hidden behind non-disclosure agreements. I do believe, however, that artists probably don't get a fair share of what they should be getting. And I'm happy to support any provision that is helping us get there. We need to strengthen the licensing and the negotiation positions of author societies, of people like yourself. The only issue we're having with the current proposal is that it is basically, in one part, providing for better licensing position for authors, but on the other hand, it is also prescribing pre-filtering on most of the large internet platforms. And we're very worried about these pre-filtering mechanisms, because they would actually install a system whereby everything we do online, everything we write, every reaction we do, every photo we share, will be first checked, first monitored, and then only if a system thinks it is legal will appear online. This is the sort of pre-filtering.
So are you talking about privacy? Is that
no?
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about freedom to express yourself, and freedom of presumption that, you know, everything you say is legal until proven the other way around.
I think you've been fed disinformation, actually.
Can I finish, though? I looked very much into the proposals in detail, and there are really two parts to it. One of them is a better negotiating and licensing position for authors. I can fully support that. But the technical provision that asks platforms to delete stuff even before it appears online, so we can see whether it's legal or not, that is what scares me, because, to be honest, this is the exact same systems countries like China
censorship you're talking about.
Yes, censorship. Countries like China and Iran have such systems in place. And of course, you'll say, we're talking about Europe, we're talking about copyright, but, well, I'm from Bulgaria, I'm from Eastern Europe, and I don't trust my government that they won't use this system once it is in place to then abuse it and to stop other sort of speech.
So what is the disinformation you're talking about here?
Well, nobody's trying to change any laws. Everybody's wanting everyone to just abide by the laws that already exist. And as far as I'm concerned, you're here from Wikimedia, who've been excluded from this directive, as far as I've heard.
Well, the European Parliament does not have a position yet, so we're not excluded, because we don't know what of the different proposals on the table will be voted in tomorrow. The last time around, there was a carve-out for projects such as ours, but only for one of our projects, not for our other projects. And even the lead rapporteur, Mr. Axel Voss from the German CDU, said on German national television that he is not sure which platforms are exactly excluded or not, and that even the courts would have to decide. And
he's also said everybody's been fed a lot of fake news, which is true.
You know,
Can you please point to what the fake news are and what I am saying?
Sorry, go ahead.
All right, I just want to say that you both fall on two different sides of this copyright law, but you agree that artists need to be paid. You want artists to be paid. So where's the disagreement there?
We can fully agree on this part of Article 13. Shake our hands and move on. I just want the pre-filtering provisions implicitly or explicitly to not be part of it, because we are afraid that this technology is quite dangerous.
If that is out of the picture, then you think big companies like Google and Facebook will willingly pay artists? I mean, is that a possibility?
we're talking about large internet monopolies here. Of course, there needs to be a law, a system in place that makes people like yourself have a better negotiating position, because otherwise you in the weaker position could never negotiate a fair contract.
Somewhere along the line, though, within all of this, copyright has become a dirty word, and people are afraid of it. And it's not. It's my paycheck. It's a lot of people's paycheck, and it needs to be. But my point is, the law already exists, and we're just asking people to abide by it. That's why I think MEPs need to support Article 13 to close the value gap, to protect artists, so we can continue to create, and then we can move on from there.
So just maybe a follow-up question: which version of Article 13?
We don't really have much time, but we'll have to follow the debate tomorrow, because all those questions will come up, indeed. But we will have a lot more for you on Raw Politics. Heated debates. Well, after the break, we check in with theCUBE and a new report on the migrant crisis. Plus, Juncker's last word, what to expect from the State of the Union address. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker will deliver his last State of the Union speech tomorrow, expected to feature prominently European sovereignty and strengthened borders as the migration crisis continues to grab headlines. A new study today looks at efforts to stem the flow of migrants and the deadly consequences. Alex Morgan and our team in the Cube in Lyon have been looking into that story. Alex.
Tessa, you'll remember through the summer we brought you the story of these ships, the NGO rescue ships, the Aquarius, the Mission Lifeline, the Open Arms and Sea-Watch. These vessels which found themselves at the centre of a European political storm as the tide turned against NGO rescue ships in the Mediterranean. And the fault lines of Europe were really exposed by this. You remember the right-wing Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini unilaterally declaring that Italy's ports were closed to all rescue ships. That left the Aquarius stranded at sea for roughly a week with 630 people on board after Malta also refused those migrants. And it left the European Union really scratching around for solutions. How were they going to solve this issue? Well, the backbone of Matteo Salvini's approach that he was really pushing was to increase reliance on the newly formed Libyan Coast Guard. And in a headline-grabbing visit to Tripoli, which Matteo Salvini tweeted all the way through, he pledged more support. He pledged ships and political support to the authorities in Tripoli, effectively handing them total control of the new search and rescue zone, the Libyan search and rescue zone. Well, new research now has analysed the impact of that shift in European policy away from NGO rescue ships. There was a period actually from late June through July when it was effectively impossible for many to operate due to this difficult climate. Well, this new research looks at the impact of the shift in policy and this reliance on the Libyan Coast Guard. Let's just bring you up some of their key findings. And I think the first is this one. Let's just show you here. These are the figures using UN figures to reach this conclusion, showing you that in April, 20 people reported dead or missing in the Mediterranean, 11 in May. But look at this, in June, that number rose to 451. This at a time when that shift in policy happened. You can see here the researchers clearly attributing this spike in drownings. And they say this was at a time when departures were comparatively low. So what happened here was departures were low, but the risk shot right up. Then what about the Libyan Coast Guard and the reliance on the Libyans? Well, this research seems to question Europe's seeming total reliance now on the Libyan Coast Guard. Look at this map here. This shows you a number of shipwrecks that took place during that period when there was effectively a clampdown on NGO rescue ships. Look at these. These are deadly shipwrecks, all occurring within 50 nautical miles of the Libyan coast. Now, the researchers claim that the Libyans are overstretched, under-resourced and unable to deal with this situation purely on their own. They also question this European approach of externalising the problem so that Libya effectively is the one dealing with it. They say this has led to a real increase in emphasis on the Libyans, but also the migrants trapped here. Europe isn't thinking through the consequences of leaving these people there, saying that Europe is mostly focused on stopping people crossing regardless of the human cost. Now, there's a full article breaking this down. The research was given to us here at Euronews ahead of anyone else, so you've got a full breakdown here on euronews.com. But no doubt, Tessa, as you were saying, migration is going to be a very big and difficult theme for Jean-Claude Juncker to address in his State of the Union tomorrow.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Alex. And as we mentioned already, Jean-Claude Juncker has a big speech tomorrow, his last State of the Union address. And ahead of that, well, we have something to share. We have this excerpt. It's high time to act and manage the refugee crisis. There has been a lot of finger pointing in the past weeks, and also member states have accused each other of not doing enough or of doing the wrong thing. And more often than not, fingers have been pointed from national capitals towards Brussels. All right, those two quotes from Jean-Claude Juncker, well, I don't blame you for thinking that that's a scoop of Juncker's speech tomorrow. It certainly sounds like it could be, right? But actually, it's from his first State of the Union speech. That's back in 2014. So what does that say about his legacy and what to expect tomorrow? Well, I'm joined by our panelists, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, and Greek MEP Eva Kaili. You're from the Alliance of the Socialists and Democrats. Now, I'll start with you. You remember the 2014 State of the Nation, State of the EU speech of Juncker. Did anything change, or you expect anything much to have changed?
Well, things have changed. We have progressed a bit. We're trying to create a stronger European Union and face the common threats that we have. So I believe that this year is going to be even more ambitious for the next year. So having a common response to threats, but also to control our external borders, I think it's really essential, since we were left alone. And being left alone led us to have this not natural coalitions of the radical right and radical left, both in Italy, also in Greece. So I think this was the result of Europe not acting very fast and outsourcing the solutions to our neighbors. So I do believe that having a better strategy, a better plan will help us in the future, because this is a problem that it's here to stay. Migration is here to stay for decades.
All right, Darren, what are you watching?
Yeah, I think that's undoubtedly true, that of course migration is going to be one of the biggest issues that the European Union is going to have to struggle with for the next, beyond the next couple of years, for the next couple of decades, as Eva was suggesting. And the problem is they still haven't really got to grips with the burden of trying to share this out. Clearly, there are countries that are on the front line of this in some senses, and others that are very unwilling to share the burden. We heard from Viktor Orban on this show earlier on today, speaking in Parliament, saying that he does not want Hungary to become a country of migrants. He doesn't want Europe to become a continent of migrants. But it's clear that Europe cannot stop large swathes of people coming. So how does it deal with it? Well, there are suggestions in this speech tomorrow from Jean-Claude Juncker that he's going to talk about some type of kind of European Coast Guard and border force to try and deal with this. Now, that may seem like a sensible, practical way of sharing that burden, actually, trying to say to countries like Greece and Spain and Italy that Europe is willing to pump money into this, but there are also questions about whether it is, again, intervening into national sovereignty, because this is a new competence for Europe.
I think European sovereignty is at the heart of it. Again, in that 2014 speech that he made, he was talking about finger-pointing to Brussels. This hasn't changed, has it?
Well, actually, we have different voices in the European Parliament and the European Council. So I wouldn't say we have the same perspective. So when you say Brussels, we have to make sure we understand what we're talking about. So the Parliament was very supportive of creating legal pathways and finding solutions and strategies to control borders, but also to have the infrastructure and share the responsibility. The Council, not really. And it's really important to notice that the countries at the borders, they faced huge political problems, and also that the countries of Visegrad, they took advantage of that and they increased populism and populistic voices there.
I think that's an important point to point out for people who don't, come to Strasbourg or to Brussels, that when you say Brussels, what does that mean? There's the European Commission, the European Parliament, sometimes they butt heads, and the European Council.
Part of the problem is that, of course, Jean-Claude Juncker is one of 4 presidents.
Sure.
And, when he have this kind of State of the Union address tomorrow, I think someone said it's not like the State of the Union address in America because it has got some vision, and it's not like the Queen's speech because it's not with the Queen. Essentially, it is with the President of the EU Commission, who, in reality, doesn't have that much power. So his vision, his talk about Europe, and 4 years ago he talked about Europe being broken. Many people would say with the migration crisis, the rise of populism and Brexit, Europe's probably more broken than ever before, and that is a real challenge to Juncker's legacy. But we have to accept he has got limitations to his power.
Oh, I would basically say that this is not exactly the case. We are trying to do many things that we didn't do years ago. So we're trying to do many things together now. So being ambitious and having a strategy, this is really important. So maybe it's not going to happen immediately, but at least now we have a strategy that's going to be heard, and especially tomorrow.
But there are many people who are doing the opposite.
We will have.
I agree.
Interesting debate. Okay, just one word each. Legacy of Jean-Claude Juncker. Eva?
Well, I think it's the investment plan, strategy investment plan, creating investments in Europe for the future.
I can't see how this could be judged as a success. Not a success.
All right. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Well, Jean-Claude Juncker's final State of the Union is the most hotly anticipated moment of this week's Strasbourg session. So tune into our special coverage tomorrow morning from 8:45 a.m. to midday Central European Summertime on Good Morning Europe. All right, it's time. How politicians prepare for this week in Strasbourg. Well, there it goes. We saw a little bit of it, but just to tell you, this is a jam-packed plenary session, and look no further than Belgium for a little bit of fun. Have a look.
The blessing of the barrel, attended by Belgium's political elite. And from their faces, you can see this is no common beer festival. The Guild of Brewers, dressed in medieval costume, carry a barrel of beer through the streets of Brussels to the cathedral. The brew is then blessed in the annual ceremony, the roots of which lie in the medicinal qualities of the country's best-loved drink.
What do you think of that, Darren? Blessing of the barrel.
It all looks a bit pious. I must say, though, I'd love to see the pictures of when after the ceremony, when people have consumed the beer rather than during it. But I think I'd rather be in Brussels than Strasbourg.
For beer?
Right now. Which is not often said.
This is the time that I will not disagree with you.
All right. All right. Well, thank you very much to you two, and thank you for everyone for watching us tonight. We'd like to hear your views. Tell us what you're talking about. I'm on Twitter at @TessaCecilia, or follow us on Twitter at euronews and use the hashtag #RawPolitics. Have a good evening and see you back tomorrow.